What is up, fight fans? We are live on MMA Weekly, the most trusted source in news and entertainment in mixed martial arts for almost 20 years. I'm Jim Greasehaber, call me Grease, and filling in for my man Jeff Kane tonight. By the way, Jeff Kane dealing with some things. We want to send our best out to our buddy Jeff Kane, and we will talk to him and see him back here soon. But sitting in place of Jeff Kane, looking like the close talker from Seinfeld. Remember that one with Judge Reinhold? It's Colin Crandall from MMA Power Hour, one of my best buddies in the business. Always love hanging out with C-Money, as I call him. And Colin Crandall is live and in the house with us here tonight on MMA Weekly. Scott Peterson on the wheels. And, guys, we have a big one tonight. Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley, as Tyron Woodley, the latest UFC fighter to be in the crosshairs of one Jake Paul. Colin, he's a former Strikeforce champ. He's a former multiple-time defending UFC champion, albeit a losing streak ending his career there. But the toughest test to date after Nate Robinson and Ben Askren for Jake Paul, the internet and YouTube sensation who started on Disney and on Vine. He has talked himself into some huge fights. He's actually a decent boxer. He gets a crack at a UFC legend in Tyron Woodley, the chosen one, tonight.
Absolutely, and Tyron Woodley is not one that you want to be in the crosshairs of unless you are a top 5 UFC welterweight, in which case you'll probably do all right, but that is not the person that is Jake Paul. And as far as what he's going to do to overcome Tyron Woodley, and is it possible? Of course it is, but there's definitely not a lot of evidence that this is going to be another walkover and easy victory for Jake Paul. Definitely not a crush, and I think a lot of people out there feel that this very well may be the first loss on Jake Paul's record.
Yeah, and Jake Paul's actually a pretty decent boxer. Now, he starched Ben Askren. Ben Askren had the dad bod in full effect, hadn't fought in a long time, not known for being a striker, but he was a champion in 2 MMA promotions, and he did win a UFC fight against former champion Robbie Lawler before Jorge Masvidal knocked him out in 5 seconds with the flying knee, and before he was decimated, and, I mean, really just taken apart by Damian Maia in what was an embarrassing performance by both guys, in my opinion, in that fight. But Colin, when I look at this fight, the craziest thing to me, now Jake Paul's been training to box for a long time. He's actually not a bad boxer. Everyone holds the internet star and the influencer thing against him, and his brother Logan, who just fought Floyd Mayweather in the embarrassing exhibition that they put on ShowTime. But this is the world we live in. Jake Paul is a minus 210 favorite. Tyron Woodley plus 5. Just say that again. Tyron Woodley is a decent size underdog against Jake Paul. Everybody buying into the Jake Paul story and the ride that he's taking us on, drinking the Kool-Aid, whatever you want to call it. But Jake Paul, a big-time favorite. And Colin, a lot of our colleagues, so to speak, in the MMA world have been picking Jake Paul to win. Now, let me explain why for 1 second before I toss it to you. It's because Jake Paul's been training to box for a long time, and Tyron Woodley just over the last 5 months working with Floyd Mayweather. But MMA fighting is so much different. You wrestle, you grapple, you do Muay Thai, you throw kicks, you do all these different things. As far as just boxing with the pillows on their hands, as I like to say, it's a completely different sport than mixed martial arts. So just because you're an elite striker, which at times Tyron Woodley was in mixed martial arts, just because you're an elite striker does not mean you're going to be an elite boxer. You cover all the combat sports as I do. I've been a boxing play-by-play guy just like you have, and we know how much different the sweet science is than striking in mixed martial arts.
Absolutely. Very, very different. The striking in MMA, the distance that you're looking out for changing levels, to watch out for the takedown. All of it is not a part of boxing. Jake Paul's been focusing on boxing, I think, for a couple of years exclusively. Does that give him an advantage than someone who may not ever have been focusing on boxing more than just the last few months exclusively, but who was a professional MMA fighter? The big difference, I feel, between this and the Ben Askren fight was a lot of people that gave Ben a chance felt that his ability to take a punch, him being the true professional fighter and proven professional fighter for years, although he was primarily a wrestler, was going to give him the advantage in that he can take the punishment, and then he was going to possibly be able to do something with a really limited striking skill set, and that proved not to be the case. Big difference here with Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley is a guy who maybe hasn't beaten the guys at the highest level in the welterweight division of the UFC recently, but that may not be Jake Paul, and he not only is a rugged, tough individual who's been able to take some murderous shots from a lot of people over the years, but also has some striking, has some power, and this definitely puts him in a much better position than Ben Askren. I think makes it a really interesting matchup, and as the professional gambler, former professional gambler in me says, there's definitely value in the odds at plus 210 underdog for Tyron Woodley.
There is, and if you want Woodley by TKO or KO, it's even bigger. But when I think about this, Colin, and I look at Woodley's fights, now Gilbert Burns beat him on the feet pretty clearly. Covington and Usman kind of mauled him up against the cage and grappled with him and beat him in that way, physically stronger and dominated him, Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. And then Vicente Luque beat him on the feet, and that was the Woodley that we had seen on his title run. The way that he outstruck Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson in their first fight at Madison Square Garden, a kickboxing legend, very impressive. His knockouts over Josh Koscheck was a big one. You know, and you look at what he did to Robbie Lawler, who's a pretty good boxer for a mixed martial artist, in the title fight in which he won the belt. So Tyron Woodley definitely has the pedigree. He definitely has the toughness. He has the big fight experience. Jake Paul's got a little less of that. But Jake Paul's a lot taller, a lot longer, and he's 15 years younger, although they only weighed in a half pound apart. So if you're looking at some of the discrepancies with the tail of the tape, reach is a lot bigger in boxing than it is in mixed martial arts. Fighters with a big-time reach advantage in the sweet science always seem to fare pretty well, and Paul's got the height advantage. Woodley may be a little bit stronger. I wonder about the cardio of Jake Paul, because we haven't seen him go very far into the fights, right? I mean, he's finished them very early with Nate Robinson and Ben Askren. So Jake Paul, unproven, untested. This is a big one for him tonight. And I really can't believe, as Tyron Woodley gets set to walk to the ring in Cleveland, where they've sold out the arena that LeBron used to fill up all the time. It hasn't been full since LeBron left. Tyron Woodley about to make the walk to the ring. I can't believe how many quote-unquote experts, and I use the term loosely, have been picking Jake Paul. For some reason, as I've looked at the tape, as I've watched their videos, as I've watched their training videos, Tyron Woodley is a beast. He's quick. He's athletic. His combinations are lightning fast, and he's got the big fight experience. He's got the head movement. He's got all those things. People are putting Jake Paul in a position, in my mind, where I watched him walking into the arena tonight. Looked a little bit nervous. Looked a little bit nervous in some of the press conferences. He was not able to get inside the head of Tyron Woodley the way he tried to. They even tried talking to his mom and doing some things there. But the thing, I still can't. How many people from the boxing and MMA worlds are actually picking Jake Paul? It still blows my mind.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are really buying into the hype, and I think also a certain amount of people feel that some of these fights may be works, and some people may feel that all Tyron's here to do is take a dive, get the money, and allow the Jake Paul hype train to continue, possibly with a fight that's illegally already fixed and with a preset result. I hate to think that. I'm not going to empower that. I don't believe that's the case, but I think some people that are talking about betting are kind of falling into that hype. One thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting about is Tyron Woodley was never a really tall 170-pound MMA fighter, but he was a thick 170-pound MMA fighter. Before USADA, he looked a lot more powerful and probably was about 190 on fight day or even more in the Strikeforce days once USADA came in. Not accusing him of anything, but once the rules changed in that regard, he always looked like it was a little harder because UFC also, a lot of people don't know, stopped use of the IV to replenish fighters after the weigh-in. All other organizations allow that. There's nothing illegal about it involving any drugs, but when you're not allowing a fighter to replenish, it's really hard for the fighters that cut a ton of weight. This is the first time in a long time, probably 10 years, that we are seeing a fully hydrated, fully fed, strong Tyron Woodley fighting not depleted. And I think that could be a big difference in what we've seen as of late for Tyron Woodley.
No doubt, and he's got the pink on. T. Wood with a big opportunity tonight. And Jeff Kane thinks I'm an idiot a lot of the things I say, Jeff Kane thinks I'm an idiot, but I said I was humiliated when Ben Askren got knocked out by Jake Paul. For our entire sport, I was embarrassed. And Woodley's got a lot on his shoulders tonight. Jake Paul takes this boxing thing seriously 24/7. He doesn't party. He's always training. His brother looked pretty decent against Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition. So we're going to see as Jake Paul makes the walk. What a dream come true, though, to be an influencer, to start on Vine, to be on the Disney Channel, to make the walk in your hometown. Last fighter of the night. He's always talking about fighter paydays. He's ripping Dana White. He's not afraid to stick his nose. I mean, he walks into a UFC pay-per-view and everybody's yelling F Jake Paul. Now he's making the last walk. And he was proud of the fact that every fighter on this card, including Tyron Woodley, at least according to Jake Paul, is getting the biggest payday of his or her career tonight. And Jake Paul is proud of that fact. Meanwhile, Colin, I got to get to something that we do every time here on our live streams on MMA Weekly. We're going to welcome the whole world in right now. We got a worldwide audience. That's Colin Crandall from MMA Power Hour. I'm Jim Greasehaber. Call me Grease. Smash that subscribe button. Hit the like. Ring the bell so you know when we give you fresh content here on MMA Weekly. But, guys, it's time for the roll call. If you're a regular, you know what's up. Give us a shout in the chat room. Where are you from? Where are you watching us? What do you think is going to happen in this main event tonight as Jake Paul has Ohio sports teams all over his shirt that he's wearing to the ring, all the Cleveland teams plus Ohio State right there. Where are you guys coming from? Where are you watching tonight? What do you think is going to happen? Roll call time here on MMA Weekly. Colin, that's a pretty dope walkout jersey that Jake Paul had made for this fight. I'm feeling it.
Without a doubt, man. Can't criticize that at all. He looks sharp. He looks sick. He looks great. And as usual, he's coming in there with a lot of people liking him. He's got his big brother behind him wearing his sunglasses, often looking like our coworker, the Schmo in MMA journalism. And so you got Jake and Logan coming down with the Paul train, right? Remember the Gracie train? We got the Paul train here. You know,
the Gracie train, like, we got the Paul train. I love Paul it. Train, you know, he's drippy, man. Look,
yeah.
There's a Gen Z term for you. He's drippy.
I like that. I like it. Or as Rocky would say, ding, ding. This is about to happen. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. Can Jake Paul take the heat of a Tyron Woodley? That's been really the biggest question, is what will happen when Jake Paul starts being touched. The fact that he's so young does give him an advantage, in recovery ability and recovery speed. But if your chin isn't good, then your chin isn't good. It's a big question here for Jake Paul. A lot of people are feeling Jake Paul could beat maybe a top 40 or top 50 ranked cruiserweight today, or light heavyweight, if you will, if you could get down there. I'm really not one of them, so I'm really one that's not going to say he can't, but we got to see how this guy's chin is. It has not been tested, and this is going to be a stern test here, unless somehow he just walks in and blows Tyron Woodley out of there. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be a really interesting test here. I think Tyron Woodley has a lot of pride. I think Tyron is going to be representing MMA, and I think there's a lot on the line. The only question I have for you, Jim, is which fight is our buddy Dana White cheering for most? Is he cheering for Vitor to beat Oscar De La Hoya because of how much he hates Oscar, or is he cheering for Tyron to beat Jake Paul because of how much he hates Jake Paul?
I think that he believes that Jake Paul's 15 minutes are going to be up soon. I think he looks at Woodley. He never liked Woodley anyway. I mean, very few UFC fighters have been more of a target for the boss than Tyron Woodley, and certainly no other champion that I can think of has ever been in the crosshairs of Dana White more than Tyron Woodley. And, he didn't endear himself to a lot of the fans. He came off as angry and disrespected, and I think he was disrespected in a lot of ways by the UFC. And really not treated all that well, if I'm being honest, by the UFC as a legendary champion. And he wore the goat necklace. And I think he always kind of like overdid it a little bit and came on a little stronger because he felt like he was disrespected and he wasn't being marketed. And he had problems with that. And then all the times he was going to fight Colby Covington, and, he would not pull out of the fight, but not agree to the fight. And, he held on and sat out for a while. So there were a lot of things there. I don't think Dana cares one way or the other, but I kind of feel like maybe he's secretly watching, right? He did take some shots at the MMA media that was in Cleveland last night instead of watching the incredible performance by Giga Chikadze over Edson Barbosa at the Apex. And I don't blame him. Hey, Dana, next time you start booking interviews, remember who was in Cleveland last night and not at the fights, and book them with the rest of us who weren't in Cleveland. So I'll say that for myself. Shameless little plug for Colin and I as well. But
Yes.
I want to say that if Dana's secretly watching, he has to be rooting for Woodley to knock Jake Paul out, because Jake Paul is all over his ass about fighter pay. Jake Paul's using his 15 minutes to rip the UFC with every opportunity he gets. He even says he wants to fight Dana White now. And the kid's brilliant at marketing himself. But I have to think anybody in the UFC or anybody who's really wanting all this to go away would want Jake Paul to get knocked out tonight, because all it takes is one. One time he gets knocked out, and there goes the mystique, there goes the aura, there go the paydays. Now, how many more times can Conor McGregor lose before the big-time payday, before the red panty nights are all done, right? But for Jake Paul, I believe it's one and done, Colin. If he gets knocked out in this fight tonight, that derails the whole hype train. That takes a big shine off of his deal with ShowTime. But if he wins tonight and he knocks out Woodley, and then he wants to fight a Jorge Masvidal, and then he wants to fight another UFC guy, which Dana will never let him do to a guy he has under contract. But at the end of the day, one bad loss for Jake Paul, and the whole thing's toast. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. And I like the fact that Tyron has 19 professional combat sports victories. This is going to be big number 20. I know he wants that. He deserves that, and I think, save for a couple of split decisions, I think he might actually, possibly should have 20 wins already. But I think he really wants that 20th victory. Man, he looks good. Man, he looks strong. He does not look depleted. The age is a big difference. There's a little bit of height and length, but I really think Tyron Woodley is going to do something. His mom is excited there. This is going to be big. But yeah, I agree. If Jake Paul loses, it's going to be big trouble. Logan Paul may have to carry the banner for the Paul brothers and be the guy people care about, unless they can find a cousin or someone else. But
he's already got a loss to KSI.
Yeah,
even though it was a DQ. Yep.
Yeah. And so we're gonna see here. I think it's time for Jake Paul to put up or shut up. I think this is a fight he may regret having taken. But I put it this way: I think Tyron Woodley has a legit chance to win this. And all I can say is I hope Tyron touches him, because the worst thing that can happen, in my opinion, tonight is the question of Jake Paul's chin to not be answered, because Woodley never touches it. That's the only thing that I think no one wants to see. Even the people that want Jake Paul to win, I think would like to see that he proves he has a chin tonight. And that's what I think we're going to be really excited to find out.
And again, it's not MMA.
Go ahead.
It's not MMA. I mean, it's so the gloves are bigger. For Woodley to take a shot with these gloves is going to be, I mean, his chin's pretty good with the other gloves on, so it'll be even better with these. Jake Paul looks the part. He's got the tats all over his body, on the side of his head. He's wearing the chains everywhere he goes. 24-year-old kid from Cleveland, Ohio, headlining in his hometown. He has not shrunk. He has not backed down 1 inch from Tyron Woodley and but no touch of gloves to order, but the reach is the same. I want to correct myself from earlier. The reach is 74 for both guys. So even though Paul looks visibly much taller, the reach is the same. So that means that Tyron Woodley can reach him from the same distance that Paul can reach him from. So I think that Tyron Woodley's got the experience getting in and out of the pocket, but Jake Paul's got a little bit of a boxing edge, and they're underway in the center of the ring. Woodley dropped down. I thought he was shooting for a takedown real quick, Colin. Little flashback there. So it's round one underway. And we got an audience all over the world. We got people from Canada, from Europe, from South America, from Scandinavia, from Australia. What's up in New Zealand? All over the USA, Detroit, Cleveland, New York, Florida. Man, Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul just kind of feeling each other out. Woodley, of course, is standing. He's standing in orthodox, and Paul, of course, orthodox. Got a long jab, Jake Paul. And they are underway, man. First of 8 rounds. Yeah. Jake Paul working the body a little bit too.
Pretty much. Yeah, kind of like a really feeling out round. You can tell this is. No one wants to, go in there half cocked and be stupid and get caught. But I like how Tyron looks. He is definitely wanting to make sure that he makes it a harder target for Paul. He's already shorter and he's fighting crouched down a little bit. Very smart, I think, for Woodley, and because we know how
Take away that
explosively
target.
that he is. Yeah, yeah, and also he's always
Yep.
been a good counter puncher, even in MMA. And so I think if he can get Paul to bite and charge in at him, he could possibly catch him with a huge counter punch. The big
Possibly. And remember,
overhand
he's
right
been
of
training with
Seawood.
Floyd Mayweather. Colin, he's been training with Floyd Mayweather, so he's got that shoulder block down, and Floyd Mayweather very comfortable fighting off the ropes, loves to do it. Saw some video of Woodley working with him and saw him, fighting off the ropes as well. Woodley kind of taking control of the center of the ring here with 120 remaining in round number 1. And man, I'll tell you what, Jake Paul's got the blinged out trunks. Woodley's got the baby blue, almost like a teal,
Yeah.
and the pink on the white. Jake Paul looked like he caught Woodley with a little bit of a hook there. Not much steam on that one, but might have scored a couple of points for him. Just about a minute left in round number 1. Scheduled for 8 rounds. Jim Grieshaber and Colin Crandall here on MMA Weekly as we are under the 1 minute mark in round number 1, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jake Paul is doing a lot of moving. He's really utilizing the ring and his height, and he's staying out of range. Both guys are being very cautious here, but they are throwing punches, a lot of jabs, a couple of body shots landed, kind of not really that hard, but they're both kind of getting each other's respect and kind of feeling out what their opponent's going to do. A lot of posing, a lot of feinting. I like that. Definitely, it looks like Woodley looks like the much thicker, stronger guy in there. Although Jake Paul does look like he is fit, younger, but Woodley looking very, very sharp. Looks like he's feeling very confident in the movement.
Yeah.
Jake Paul. Yeah, Jake Paul definitely looking like he's trying to get the distance, but he's wanting to stay outside. And Woodley, for the first time,
backing away from a couple of those shots. Yep.
And
end of the round.
And that ends the first round. Yeah, what do you think, man? That's like a hard to call round. It was really a feeling out round. I don't even know who to give that to. I would say it's 6
a whole lot of nothing.
The other.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of nothing, Colin. Well, there's feeling out.
That's really what.
But Woodley did come. Woodley did come at Paul. Jake Paul's going to look to counter and control the range, and they're throwing that up on the screen right now. We talked about that earlier. For Tyron Woodley, kind of feeling him out, looking like he measured him up a little bit, threw a couple of big shots that, didn't really come close, but he definitely has, from what I see in round number 1, he has Jake Paul on his bike a little bit, backing up from him throughout that round.
He does.
Jake Paul does not want any of that right hand from Tyron Woodley. That's clear.
No, and you can tell Jake Paul has a lot more respect than he had for Ben Askren, kind of going at Ben Askren, not even having his hands up, just with impunity. And he did not do that at all with Tyron Woodley. He looks like from the get-go he has respect for the fact that this is by far his most dangerous opponent, and they are starting here for round 2, and Jake Paul really trying to stick his jab out, trying to distance and holding his arm out. Even Tyron Woodley was having none of that, throwing a few good punches. Overhand right blocked, which is thrown by Jake Paul. Jake Paul looking like he's getting a little bit into a groove, but once again, Tyron Woodley deciding to be the one that holds the ring center and exercises the ring generalship, and Jake Paul looking like he's happy to be like going side to side with his back nearly on the ropes.
Yeah, and when you look at what Jake Paul's do, clearly his corner told him, and we can't hear it, told him to use the jab more, trying to establish the in round number 2. And I'll tell you what, Jake Paul taking the center of the ring. Woodley misses with a left hook there. Just about a minute gone in round number 2. Really appreciate you having you here with us tonight on MMA Weekly, streaming to the reactions of the Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight in Cleveland, Ohio. Jim Grieshaber, Colin Crandall. Subscribe, like, you know the deal. Hit that bell, guys. And my internet connection's a little wonky. We got the Wi-Fi thing going, but I think we're all right. But Jake Paul kind of moving around the ring, Colin. Tyron Woodley, as he did in round number 1, taking the center of the ring, being the aggressor, having Jake Paul backing up. And that's something that we saw in round number 1. He's doing it again in round 2.
Yeah, definitely. Jake Paul stopped briefly for a pose and quickly got back to being serious. I just think he's really taken that heel act as far as possible, and even in a fight. But definitely some more engaging in this round than in round 1. A few punches and flurries thrown by both guys. Nothing landing cleanly, but definitely touching each other. Good overhand right by Tyron Woodley. And Jake Paul, basically, they're both throwing really crisp jabs. and a little jab there, jab hook kind of knocked Woodley a little bit off balance, but no harm to Woodley. Woodley definitely looking comfortable. Jake Paul also looking pretty comfortable too. They're now battling out, and a two-punch combination by by Jake Paul, blocked by Tyron Woodley, but did look
Blocked
sharp.
by Woodley.
Had a little,
Good
yeah,
job. Good job by Woodley. And one of the things I'll say about Woodley's, he's got those hands in tight with the elbows in. You can see that he's really been working on the boxing side. He looks a lot different for UFC fans and MMA fans who are watching Woodley right now, Colin. He's definitely, his whole stance is different. You can tell he trained and drilled. He missed with an uppercut there, came pretty close to Jake Paul. So obviously in this second round, under 30 seconds left, you're going to start to see who's in better shape. People thinking that because Paul's younger, his cardio might be better. But I don't. Woodley looks in great shape. You talked about the hydration with the IVs that he can't do in MMA. And with 10 seconds left in round number 2, still very close with Jake Paul breathing a little bit heavy toward the end of the round.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, but the IVs in this case, this fight was a 190 limit. I mean, you guys got to know, who are not familiar with MMA or Tyron Woodley, he's been killing himself for a dozen years, having to make a 170 limit. And we know that most guys 170 have walk around at least close to 190 or over. So Tyron Woodley, like, this is how Tyron Woodley probably looked walking around when he wasn't fighting for all these years. Just really strong, really thick, and he doesn't need any IVs when you can weigh in at 190. This guy looks like he was eating, he was working out hard, he had all of his energy and recovery ability to do hard workouts. And does that mean that at 40 years old all of a sudden he can go and own MMA or own boxing? Probably not, but it does mean that he is actually not fighting compromised like he has over the last few years. And I think especially in MMA, as he's become older, having to still make that 170 was a big problem. But yeah, the bell rings for the third round. Interesting. Woodley
third round,
taking
Colin.
Ring center. Yep, ring center.
Yeah,
yep.
Woodley coming right out and taking the center of the ring as we start round number 3 here on MMA Weekly. Jim Greasehaber, Colin Crandall, streaming live around the world. Appreciate having you with us here tonight. Woodley pushing Paul up against the ropes, and I thought we'd see a little more of that from Woodley tonight, kind of getting in there, tying him up, clinching him up, throwing that strength on him, letting Paul feel that. But I have to say, I'm very impressed with the way Woodley has been patient in this fight, because, he's an MMA fighter, he's a champion, and there's been a lot of talk back and forth. He's got to feel like he's got the upper hand. He's got to feel like he's a much better fighter, but he's been very patient in letting the fight come to him. But he has taken the center of the ring in every round, dropping his hands a little bit now. Woodley hits him with a right hand, though, maybe the cleanest one of the fight so far.
Yeah, left-right combination by Woodley, and that definitely got Jake Paul's attention. I think Woodley is feeling very confident here. I think Woodley is really not feeling like this man, Jake Paul, can hurt him. And I think if that continues, then pretty soon Woodley's going to start bringing the heat. But yeah, as an MMA fan, I'm very happy to say that Woodley is in this fight. And I think Jake Paul is doing everything he can. Jake Paul's mouth is open. Woodley looks like he could go for another 20 rounds. So at this moment, the older man, the MMA fighter, I think is in better condition. And so dancing off the ropes is Jake Paul, but Woodley pressuring him. Yeah, Woodley.
Yeah, he keeps shaking his head like nothing's really coming near him. But I'll tell you this, man. Tyron Woodley has a center of the ring. But I got to be honest, I got to take the two fighters out of the conversation for a minute here. As a boxing fan, watching this fight, as Paul hits Woodley to the body with a right hand, but missed with a left up top coming back. But I want to say that if I were watching a championship level boxing match, which of course this isn't, or an elite level boxing match, which they want to pass this off as, I would not be impressed with either fighter saying they're fighting on a high level here tonight. I wouldn't say it as a boxing guy. If I'm watching this, I don't think it's been a great boxing match so far.
No, I would agree. And I think the people that are saying that Jake Paul could probably compete with the top 20 or top 30 pro boxer in the cruiserweight division are seeing now that that's not the reality. But I will say that Tyron Woodley is doing better than people thought. He did get caught with a good uppercut. He shook his head no, which usually means that it did hurt. But
means yes.
I think Woodley is definitely, right? Usually means yes when you're shaking your head no or smiling. But Woodley is still stalking his opponent. I think really, Tyron Woodley, I think, is very confident that he can take the punishment and anything that Jake Paul throws. Good right to finish the round. Nice overhand right by Woodley. Yeah, this is a fight here. May not be the most technical. It's not the two most talented boxers by far in the world, but this is a pretty good fight. And Tyron Woodley is absolutely in this fight. And it's set for 8 rounds. Looks like a prayer is being said there by Jake Paul's mother.
But Jake Paul's mom's got their hands together, Colin. Yeah, and I mean, a good night for her. Logan Paul fought Floyd Mayweather. Now Jake's fighting Tyron Woodley. And, you know, you see Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports. They got the sports book all over this thing tonight. But, you know, they're showing some of the highlights of that 3rd round. And, you know, you start to look at Jake Paul came through with that uppercut. And it was blocked partially by Woodley. It hit his arm and then grazed his chin, came back with a right that grazed him a little bit after it was partially blocked. Jake Paul getting mostly air on that one. But when I look at what Woodley's done, taking control of the center of the ring is one thing, but he has landed some shots. They just showed that right from the end of the round that you talked about as it happened live. He hit Jake Paul right on the button, and Paul got right in his face afterward to act like it didn't hurt. But that one stung him a little bit as we head to round number 4, just about to get started in Cleveland, Ohio. You have to wonder what the judging will be like in Ohio with the commission there. But round 4 of 8, Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley on Showtime Boxing pay-per-view as they both come out with a little more snap and a little more fire in round 4, Colin.
Oh, good exchange. Yeah, a right hook by Woodley and left hook by Paul both landed. And this is a fight here, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of which, MMA, if you like MMA, MMA Power Hour is my show. Check us out on Fight TV and YouTube every Tuesday night for 4.5 years. It's going to be some of the best talk you've ever seen. We have some of the best guests possible. Jim Grieshaber himself has been a guest, one of my favorite MMA journalists out there as well. So MMA Power Hour, don't forget, check us out. So this is interesting, Jim. I have Tyron Woodley ahead in this fight. I think he's looking really,
not by much, though, right? I think not by much.
No, it's close.
It's close.
I think, it's close. I'd say 2 rounds to 1 and 1 round draw. I know boxing is okay with the drawed rounds more than MMA. I think that they're both still trying to be careful, and it makes sense. They really, they both are kind of aware of what each other has, and I think they definitely.
I'm looking at Jake Paul's, and I call it a purse. I'm sorry, it's a Gen Z thing, I know, but the Mickey Mouse bag, man, because everybody's making fun of him for being on the Disney Channel. This kid knows how to make money. Snatching Floyd Mayweather's hat. I mean, you got to admit, this kid is a freaking marketing genius. His brother Logan, they started on Vine. I remember I used to watch him. I used to do an MMA show on radio with Ryan Bader and Aaron Simpson, and we'd watch their Vines, and we'd play some of them on the show. They were very entertaining. They took the Vine audience over to YouTube as Woodley just misses with a big shot to the body. A minute 10 and counting on my clock as Woodley stalks him down, and Woodley hits him with another right hand. So that's another big right hand. And then see, Colin, here's what I'm saying, right? Woodley pushing him into the corner, clenching up. Let him feel that strength. Let him feel that big upper body and that clench game.
Big right by Woodley. Woodley hurt.
Woodley knocks him into the ropes. You're a couple seconds ahead of me, Colin. That was a big shot from Tyron Woodley, who's showboating a little bit, winding up the punch. Look out, Jake Paul. Look out, Jake Paul.
Jake Paul's left is too low. Jake Paul's left is down near his waist. What is he doing?
He's dazed is what he's doing. He got rocked by that right hand from the former UFC welterweight champ.
Yeah. Good exchange. Left and right for Woodley.
Nice job by Jake. Coming in. A little bit careful, Colin, on the play-by-play. I know it's your first time, but we got to be careful. We can't call the fight like it's live while we're reacting here.
Sorry about that.
So a little careful with that, but I'm just reminding you.
You got it.
That's okay. Yep. I don't think you crossed the line, but we got to be careful because it's exciting to watch, and we're like 5 seconds left in this round, but this has been a big round for the chosen one, Tyron Woodley, landing some big shots and stalking toward Jake Paul at the bell. And Paul's smiling as he goes back to his corner for the cameras. But then when he gets there, Colin, he's breathing heavy and he looks like he's been beaten up a little bit by Tyron Woodley. This is gut check time for Jake Paul.
Yeah, without a doubt. He did recover in his favor. He did recover fairly quickly from that big shot. And then he got hit once more, not as hard, and seemed to recover from that. But he got on his bicycle. Look at that. Everyone knows that T. Wood has that overhand right. And it's funny, Jake Paul was defending against it, and it just landed right over it. And then Woodley started to get a little confident, hot dogging a little bit. He got hit, but then he landed another one. But yeah, Jake Paul, as young as he is
big
and in
one.
good condition, he was able to recover. But I think Woodley's feeling it. And I'll tell you what, if Jake Paul
He almost punched him through the ropes, Colin.
Yeah, he
As
did.
they start round number 5, he almost punched him through the ropes with the biggest right. And just getting started, round 5 of 8. Colin, go ahead and well, 1 second. We're here on MMA Weekly's YouTube. Subscribe, hit the bell, like. We're having fun with you in the chat, Jim Grieshaber and Colin Crandall. You had a point you were trying to finish as they started round 5.
Yeah, okay, and not doing. They're exchanging a couple of hard shots,
nice
landing
uppercut
by Woodley. Jake Paul ate it this time. Jake Paul's moving. He's moving. Woodley is taking the ring center. It's really this is gut check time for Jake Paul, because
Woodley's got to be careful with the showboating, though.
Oh,
he's got to be careful.
yeah,
He's showboating a little bit. Like, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
You don't want to get caught
Yeah.
coming in and being a little over aggressive. That's one thing in MMA. When you smell blood, you might go for the finish a little bit quicker than you would in boxing, and that could be just, memory kicking in, habit for Tyron Woodley. But they actually had Jake Paul winning the first 3 rounds and Woodley winning the 4th. I don't know where they got that. Steve Farhood on Showtime.
Thinking. Steve Farhood has been around the boxing game probably for almost as long as I've been alive. So he's a sharp guy, but I think he's wrong in this situation. And but the rounds are close. I just feel that the harder punches, the punches with more impact, have landed by Tyron throughout the whole fight. But Paul is quick. And his technique is pretty good. He really is keeping that left hand low, though, and you just don't want to do that against Tyron Woodley. But Woodley is keeping his chin tucked. His posture is good.
Jake Paul just missed with a big overhand right. He's trying to work the body, too, on Woodley. But Paul's hands, you mentioned it last round, Paul's hands are getting lower and lower, but he still looks fresh. He's recovered completely from a couple of those shots he took. But Woodley has kind of slowed down a little bit and being, that right just missed, too. Yeah, and then Paul hits him with a pretty hard left.
Woodley angry. Woodley really, I'll tell you, this.
Yeah, you got to keep your cool in there if you're Tyron.
Yeah. Tyron really wants to end this guy, though. He really wants to end this guy. You can feel it. And
he does.
I just, but he's got to get busy. There's a lot of posturing.
Stalking him.
A lot of, I think 20 seconds gone by with not even a punch thrown. There it is. One jab. Good jab by Paul. Woodley returning with a good jab. Paul is throwing some big overhand rights that are just whistling by Woodley's chin and missing by a half an inch. And a good exchange there also. Both guys
and Jake Paul is landing with the jab.
Nice.
And Jake Paul is definitely representing himself well. He's a pretty decent boxer. I mean, I will say this about the kid. Now, I want to see Woodley do more of this. Woodley pushing him into the corner, clenching him up, tie him up, grab him, do whatever you can to wear him out on the inside. Use that wrestling and that clinch. That's what I want to see MMA fighters do more of when they box, because you can get in there and you can tie him up and you can pull on him and yank on him, and that can tire a guy out a little bit. And I want to see Woodley do a little bit more. But I will say this, Jake Paul is connecting a little bit more as they finish up this round. He connected with a lot more shots in that round. So Jake Paul, I think, actually won that round. So if you believe the unofficial scoring, it would be 4-1 Jake Paul at the end of 5.
Yeah, I don't have it that way, but it's conceivable. One thing I can say is Woodley is starting to be really cautious, and part of it, I think, is his reflexes are not quite what they used to be at 40, 41 years old. There were a couple situations where I was just believing that he was going to throw, and he just he couldn't push the button. And that's what happens a little bit as you get to be a little bit older, as we know personally. Not that we're old, but the bottom line is I think that 5 years ago Woodley would have ended Jake Paul, and right now though it's a really tough fight. But I think see Woodley, I know Woodley doesn't want to walk into anything. And I think
he doesn't, and Jake Paul threw some heat as they start round number 6. Jim Grieshaber, Colin Crandall here on MMA Weekly. Subscribe to our YouTube. It helps us out with the algorithm. Like and hit that bell as well. Round 6 of 8, Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul. Love that they were jawing at each other, going back and forth. See, here's Woodley again, tying him up, pushing him back, bullying him around a little bit. That is what I want to see a lot more of from Tyron Woodley. And then off the clinch, you might be able to hit something on the way out. And I think that Tyron Woodley, after landing a couple of those big right hands 2 rounds ago, Colin, he got a little bit cocky. He started showboating. He got a little bit aggressive, and I think he took himself out of his game plan a little bit. Now, unofficially, they have Jake Paul up 4-1 on the scorecard. So that means that the best Woodley could do under that scenario would be a draw.
Unless he knocks him out.
Unless he knocks him out. But I'm talking about on the scorecards. If it goes the distance, Woodley would be able to get a draw, and that's it. But he's got to, Woodley wants to knock him out. He just hit him with a pretty big right. He clenches him up again against the ropes. A lot more of that. A lot more tying him up. Someone said that to Woodley in the corner for sure, because they must have heard me. Someone had the earpiece in watching MMA Weekly, Colin, because he started to do that a lot more. But it only makes sense for an MMA fighter with a wrestling pedigree to get in there and body him up, as Woodley's been doing a little bit more of lately as we approach the minute 30-second mark of round 6 of 8. Jake Paul really representing himself well against the former UFC and Strikeforce multiple-time champion Tyron Woodley, the chosen one. Jake Paul, you can see him right now, Colin, a lot more confidence exuding from the problem child right now.
Yeah, what we're seeing is Jake Paul is starting to feel more comfortable. He's still letting Tyron Woodley take ring center, but Tyron Woodley is taking ring center and just kind of following and chasing Jake Paul. He's not cutting off the ring. That's the problem. I don't know what's wrong with my video here. Maybe it's not enough battery left. But yeah, there was a good shot. But Tyron can't just follow and zombie walk after Jake Paul. He's got to be able to start throwing and getting busier. Can you still hear me at all, Jim?
We're hearing you fine. Your video's frozen, but we're hearing you fine. So no worries, Colin. You're good. We're approaching the 30-second mark of round 6. Paul with a left hook as he's backing up, hit him with a jab. Woodley tying him up again. And Woodley doesn't want to lose, but you definitely don't want to be knocked out by Jake Paul. But again, this is a multiple-time UFC and Strikeforce champ. This is a legendary MMA champion. Jake Paul into the 6th round, almost done with it right now. By most indications, and on the unofficial scorecards, Jake Paul ahead in this fight. Woodley ducks under a big right and then clenches him up against the corner with under 10 seconds left. But Tyron Woodley in the last couple of rounds has not looked the same, as Paul hits him with a left and then Woodley counters with a left as we end the round.
Yeah, Woodley is strong there. Woodley, he's doing what he has to do, but he's just not doing it enough. In other words, he's coming in, he's landing some hard shots, but it's just not often enough.
Oh, there goes Colin. I don't know if his phone died or what there, guys, but we're still live here on MMA Weekly as we hit the 7th round. Colin Crandall of MMA Power Hour is here with me, and I think we might have lost that battery with him there. He might try to get back on, and I think it's one of those iPhone things where you can't have the headphones in and the battery being charged at the same time. So we'll see if we can get that solved here for you. In the meantime, I'm Jim Greasehaber. Call me Grease. Love having you all here. Those numbers skyrocketing in the chat room right now on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button. Hit the like. Hit the bell so you know when we're coming back at you with more content. But, man, Jake Paul representing himself well. Tyron Woodley looking pretty good as well in this fight tonight as we hit round number 7. I would say Woodley won round number 6. We're going to have to see. This cruiserweight bout is into the 7th of a scheduled 8 round. And Colin, I hear him back, but Tyron Woodley right at Jake Paul, throwing a couple shots, clenching him up, pushing him against the ropes in the corner with 2:40 and counting remaining in round number 7. And Colin, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but Tyron Woodley looking more and more aggressive, as he might be down on the scorecards, Colin. But Woodley, again, taking control of the center of the ring. See, they gave Paul the 6th round again. I don't know what they're watching.
I don't know either. Can you hear me, Jim?
Round 6. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I felt Woodley won that as well. You can hear me now, right?
I can hear you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Woodley has to get busier. Steve Farhood's unofficial card doesn't mean anything, kind of like the late Harold Letterman, who I found was wrong about 80% of the time.
Oh, my God. 80%
right
at least.
Between
him and Larry Merchant, I was wondering if they were going to start the early bird special. Woodley with a nice left right there. Although Larry Merchant, legendary with Floyd Mayweather, saying if he was 50 years younger, he would kick his ass. But that was funny. But
that was with a good exchange.
Good exchange. Woodley hits him with a right. Woodley. Paul with a left coming off the ropes. See, now when Woodley backs him into the ropes and when Paul's coming off the ropes, he's landing that left hook almost every time.
Yeah.
Woodley just missed with a big right.
Distance. Yeah, but
Nope.
that's been kind of the story of the fight. Woodley keeps on just missing. He has landed some good shots, but there have been so many good shots that he's just missing because he knows if he steps right into the pocket with their reach being equal, he can get caught as well. And I think he may be a little bit more concerned about his chin having it been checked and tested and come up wanting a little bit over the last few years of his career. Whereas I think Jake Paul is confident enough in his chin at his age and his head movement. So
Yeah.
it's just Woodley is
Big,
just
strong kid.
not. Yeah, he is. Woodley just has to be willing to step in. If he can step in, then he can hurt Jake Paul. I really believe it. And I think he's
Woodley just
gotta
hit
be
him with a
willing to
pretty
do it,
good left
otherwise.
hook there. Yeah, he's got to be willing to do
good
it.
Jab,
But
good jab.
here's the thing, Colin, about Woodley right now. Woodley looks fresh. He's got a lot of energy in there.
Yes.
Jake Paul breathing heavy and kind of trying to stay away from Woodley. Tyron Woodley is being made to chase him a little bit. He clenches him up again. Jake Paul is younger, 15 years younger. We've said it multiple times here tonight than Tyron Woodley. But his people have to be telling him, look, this is anybody's fight. You might be down a few of these rounds. You got to get in there and get busy. Jake Paul worked the body with a left hand. Woodley missing with a right, rushes in and clenches him with under 10 seconds remaining in the round. 5 seconds remaining. It doesn't look like we're going to get another exchange as we hit 2-1, and neither guy throws a punch at the end of round number 7. We have one more round to go.
Yeah, Jake Paul landed. Jake Paul landed pretty flush with that. I think it was an overhand right. And Woodley just ate it. I mean, that's the one thing that I think Woodley has to do, and I'm sure his corner is going to be urging him, imploring him to do this, is just go
Jake
for it
Paul
in
looks
round
tired.
8. I mean, go out on your shield. Yeah, Jake Paul
looks tired.
And Woodley, and Woodley can take his punch. Woodley can
take his punch. He's taking
Jake
a bunch
Paul's
of them.
punches. Yeah,
there's a nice left by Woodley looking at the highlights. The left hook that hit him flush on the cheek. But when I look at what Woodley's been able to do in this fight, he has taken control of the ring. He has hit him with some pretty good shots, but Jake Paul has really impressed me. Now, when Jake Paul's moving around, making Woodley miss, there's the right hand that you talked about that landed very flush for Paul. Woodley came back with a body shot, but that was maybe the cleanest shot that Jake Paul has landed all night. Here we are, fans, on MMA Weekly. Jim Greasehaber, call me Grease, Colin Crandall, Tyron Woodley, the former UFC and Strikeforce champ, and Jake Paul, the reality TV star, are into round number 8, the final round in this cruiserweight matchup. A very entertaining fight. It's gotten better as it's gone along, Colin, and Woodley coming out very aggressive in round number 8, throwing a bunch of shots in the exchange there. Woodley hit Jake Paul and then took one off the dome in retaliation.
Absolutely. 2 big, impressive rights by Tyron Woodley, answered by Jake Paul, but definitely advantage Woodley so far. Logan Paul screaming at his brother from ringside. Jake Paul still on his horse, which is pretty much what he's been on the whole fight. Woodley just has to be willing to jump in there. He's got to throw. I'm sure his corner is yelling at him. If he just goes in there and throws, then he could possibly take this kid out of there. Because
and Steve Farhood's got it 6 rounds to 1 for Jake Paul. Steve Farhood of ShowTime has it unofficially. I think that's a little ridiculous right now when you look at the scorecards. But I want to say that I want to say that on the scorecards, I would have this. I mean, I'd say it's pretty even, and I wouldn't even want to score it. But there's no way on God's green earth I would ever have it 6-1 as we approach the minute 30 mark. 6-1 is a huge discrepancy in rounds for Jake Paul. I don't think it's 6-1.
It is. I think Steve Farhood's no fan of MMA, and that's reflected in his score here. Because even though Steve Farhood's been scoring for longer than me, I've been watching boxing fights and scoring them on my own since I was a kid too. And this is not a shutout by any stretch of the imagination.
Not even close. It's a very close fight. And Tyron Woodley still has a chance to get the knockout here in round number 8. And Paul's hit him with a couple of big shots these last couple of rounds too. As we hit the 1 minute mark, guys, almost in the books. You have to be impressed with what Jake Paul has done. Tyron Woodley, clearly, obviously, a much better showing than Ben Askren and representing himself very well for a guy who's never boxed before. It's his first professional boxing match, and he looks like he might have a bit of a future in the ring. But with 45 seconds and counting, each fighter needs to get busy because you never want to leave it to the judges.
They do. Yeah,
you never want to leave it to the judges.
Got to go for it. Never.
30 seconds left.
Got to go for it. Yeah, in the final 30, hopefully we see some flurries here. Tyron's going to turn himself into Sugar Ray Leonard here in the last 30 seconds.
He's got to do it. We got to see something with
there
20 seconds
Big
remaining
right.
in the fight. Tyron Woodley coming after him, hits him with a big right hand. Paul clenches him up. We got 15 seconds left. Let go of each other. Let's go. We want to see some fighting here. Woodley lands another one, and we got 10 seconds left in the fight, Colin. We're wrapping it up. Tyron Woodley stalking him down. Jake Paul in the corner. 5 seconds remaining. Woodley with a big right hand that misses. Jake Paul walking away, and clearly each fighter thinks he is victorious here tonight. We're going to go to the judges' scorecards to see who the winner is. And Colin, we got our biggest audience of the night tonight. Everyone in the world is in our MMA Weekly YouTube chat room. We appreciate you. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for us. Mama Paul's happy. She's got her arms up in the air. A really good showing by both fighters, no matter who wins. But I have to say, man, I'm going to give, if I'm going to guess, I'm going to have to give a slight edge and say Jake Paul's going to win by decision.
You know, to me, I wouldn't mind seeing a draw in this fight. I think it was really close. I think that, I think that Jake Paul was doing a lot of running. I think the ring generalship went to Tyron Woodley. I think power punches and damage to Tyron Woodley. I think effective defense was pretty close. Punches landed may have been a little bit more for Jake Paul. No, I think this is a really, really close fight. I think that I put it this way: if Jake Paul wins, it better not be anything more than 5 rounds to 3 at worst.
No, it was the jabs, though, Colin. I'm telling you, and they just put the numbers up. That's my thought exactly. Is that Jake Paul landed a lot more and threw a lot. He threw 122 jabs to 48, landed 36 to 11, and that counts a lot in boxing. Woodley outstruck him on the power punches. There I go, MMA term. Outstruck him 41 out of 115 to 35 out of 85 for Paul. 71 of 207 to 52 of 163. And that's why I would give the edge to Jake Paul, because of the jab, the frequency with which he threw it, and the number of times he landed it. That's going to be why Jake Paul wins this fight, because Woodley really didn't throw a lot of jabs. And in boxing, you have to do that. And I think that's where he lost this fight.
Yeah, very, very possibly. It was a good fight. You just wish that Woodley would have been willing to just be a little bit more aggressive. Than if he was, he may have been caught, because Jake Paul was the faster fighter. Jake Paul clearly was quicker. You could see he was the younger man. But I'll tell you what, he did a lot of running. Jake Paul did a lot of running. And so my question to you, Jim Grieshopper, is, did we get the question answered? Can Jake Paul take a lot of good shots, or did we not? I think we kind of did, but I think he showed
3 or 4 of them
less. Yeah, he showed less the ability to take a shot or be willing to take a shot, and more of the ability to, to show really good defense and avoiding the shots. But he did take a few.
And that's a big part of boxing. That's a big part. I mean, Floyd Mayweather made a living being the best fighter of our generation with Logan Paul screaming at ringside at the end of the fight. We're waiting for the judge's decision. The two fighters hugging it out. Jake Paul talking to him in the ring, probably Conor McGregor style right now, telling him it's all business, like Conor tried with Khabib.
Sure it was.
But we'll see here. I mean,
I'm sure.
Jake Paul definitely landed more jabs. Tyron Woodley controlled the ring a little bit more. He landed more power shots. But we're going to see right now, Paul versus Woodley goes the distance. We're here streaming live on MMA Weekly. Jim Grieshopper and Colin Crandall of MMA Power Hour, which you can check on Fight, F-I-T-E, every
Tuesday night, 6 to 8 p.m.
The center. We're waiting the final scoring right now, Colin, and we don't have our volume on, so we're going to have to see whose hand they raise without it. But I think the slight edge goes to Jake Paul. They're reading the scores right now, and we are very close to giving you the result right now. The ref touches their hands together in the middle, and right now that's that moment that fighters live for, getting your hand raised. And I want to see that. I'm a little behind you, Colin, but I want to see that the split decision, and the winner is Jake Paul. Jake Paul gets the decision, split decision over Tyron Woodley, and Woodley clearly did not like it, but Cleveland's going crazy, the Paul family going crazy, and Jake Paul passes the toughest test of his young boxing career tonight in Cleveland, Ohio, with a split decision win over Tyron Woodley. And with that, Colin, we get a super chat from Mike Johnson. Really appreciate you, Mike. We always get those in here, and we got a ton of people watching live. But Colin Crandall, I figured Jake Paul would get the decision. It ends up being a split. Woodley not happy, but I think the judges got it right.
Yeah, I think a split decision makes sense to me because it shows that one judge saw that Tyron did enough to win this as well. So I like that it was a split. Yeah, could have gone either way to me. And seeing Paul win it is fair. You know what I mean? Possibly if pushed, I would say maybe he slightly edged Woodley, although I really think a 4-4 draw would have been what I personally would have called it. I think that Tyron
look at the moms
Woodley
hugging though. There you go. The moms hugging in the middle of the ring is actually really cool. The two moms, Mama Woodley and Jake Paul's mom, and Jake Paul's fiance. Good Lord, Jake Paul wins no matter what.
Oh Lord.
To be young and rich and famous, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Jake Paul wins no matter what happens. Colin, just take a look at her. Good Lord.
Oh Lord. Yep. That is the truth.
I don't want to get in trouble here. Hashtag Me Too. No. We don't need any of that.
The Me Too movement, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you, Colin. Woodley's obviously very disappointed, Tyron Woodley, but I think that even though the result is the result, he didn't get knocked out. He made a very nice showing and did an excellent job in his first boxing match tonight. And being an MMA champion and losing to a kid like Paul, look, it's time we start taking Jake Paul serious as a boxer. This isn't a UFC champion getting beat up by a reality star. This kid is a legitimate boxer who's going to have a legitimate boxing career. Will he be championship level? Who the hell knows, right? But he actually is a very good boxer, and it's time the world realizes Jake Paul's here to stay. This is not a circus act anymore. This is legit.
I would agree with you. I still don't like him personally, and I still think anyone in the top 10 in the cruiserweight division knocks the living crap out of him. So that's
absolutely
just me, though. But definitely he's a good athlete. He's a strong guy. If you take a young, big, strong guy off the street who has not trained much, then Jake Paul will knock the crap out of that guy. I'll definitely throw that out there for sure. So he's not a joke. He's a tough guy. He definitely did take some powerful shots by a strong man.
Top 10 kill him, right? But let me ask you this. So you're talking about the top 10 guys, and of course, he's just getting started in his boxing career. He hasn't even fought a legit boxer yet. Do you think he should keep fighting MMA fighters, which really isn't an accurate representation? You're not going to get a really great read on his skills as a boxer? Or do you think that, it's been, let's be honest, he's progressed a little bit more from Nate Robinson to Ben Askren and now Tyron Woodley. Do you think he needs to keep fighting UFC fighters who are coming in for a payday? Or when do you think Jake Paul should start fighting legit boxers? I think it's getting close to that time.
I think it is. I think it is that time. I think that he had a 40-year-old guy whose skill set was wrestling for the most of his life, except for the last 15 years where he did some striking in with his wrestling, mostly a big, powerful overhand right, and he beat that guy just barely. So do we need to see him fight guys that are only at this level anymore, guys that are 40 years old, former MMA fighters who have lost most of their last several fights? No. Does he need to go and try to demand a top 20 professional boxer? No. But I think it's time that if he wants to fight MMA fighters, make it be someone who's striker. If he wants to bring on Anderson Silva, who's in his 40s, that's good. If he wants to bring on Vitor Belfort, if he wants to fight a 49-year-old Oscar De La Hoya, be my guest. Yeah. Oscar will knock the crap out of him.
He will. But let me ask you this, though. That's MMA fighters, and those are old and retired MMA fighters. And Woodley at 39, if he continues to progress and he wants to fight Masvidal next, Dana's never going to let him do that because Masvidal helped train him for the Askren fight, and then he was saying that he's not much of a boxer afterwards, or that he would get knocked out by Woodley, which didn't come true tonight. But what I'm wondering is, with Jake Paul's progression as a boxer, how good can he actually be? Will there be a point in time that you think he can actually be, and I don't want to say a champion because that's, top of the world stuff, but to be a solid pro, to win most of his fights, to get a lot more big paydays and bring a lot of attention to the sport, but actually be a legitimate boxer with a shot one day to potentially become a title contender? Do you see any of that for Jake in his future?
Well, I'll tell you this. I've been watching boxing since 1979, I think. And I've watched probably 5,000 rounds of boxing matches, if not 10,000 rounds. And my answer to that is unequivocally no. Absolutely not. I think the top 30 guys beat the living crap out of Jake Paul. I think the top 50 guys beat the living crap out of Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul will never come even close to being in the top 20 in the cruiserweight or light heavyweight division in boxing, and I would literally bet my life on it.
Well, okay, so that's what we're talking about right there. But you got to give him the fact that he's definitely brought a lot of eyes and ears. He's made some big paydays for some fighters. He's got the huge money ShowTime contract. Steven Espinosa loves him, and why not? He's a cash cow. But we've gotten to the point, Colin, in combat sports where, and I don't want to call them circus acts or freak shows anymore. I don't think that's fair after watching what Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley just did. But this is not highest level boxing. We are at a point in boxing, and I've been a boxing fan my whole life too, and you and I are the same age, man. So I grew up watching Sugar Ray and Hearns and Hagler, the end of Muhammad Ali. Larry Holmes was the heavyweight champion. We grew up Alexis Arguello all the way through, and then the Pernell Whitakers and the De La Hoyas and the B-Hops and I mean, look, all these years, the Sugar Shanes and the Winky Wrights and the Jermaine Taylor and all these guys, right? But boxing is devoid of big-time stars right now. Boxing is devoid of big-time stars. So when you look at and like they're trying to milk the Fury Wilder thing for as much as they can, but boxing doesn't have big-time stars anymore. And we're at a point where these fights draw a lot more eyes and ears than even, and Errol Spence just pulled out of his fight with Pacquiao. Pacquiao just lost the end of an era.
Right.
Boxing doesn't have the fighters who can draw big numbers. So we're at the point in time where the Jake Paul fights are not only going to outperform these other fights, they're going to crush them numbers-wise. So the networks like ShowTime are going to go that direction, and the fans are not going to see the best fighters like we used to.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll tell you what, I have no problem saying that Jake Paul is good for the sport. I have no problem saying that the Jake Paul train will continue on. I have no problem saying that he right now is a much needed star for boxing, because boxing 5 years ago was looking pretty darn good, and now it really kind of isn't. And so
who besides Canelo? I didn't mention Canelo. Who else? Who's a big draw?
There really aren't. Tank, Gervonta Davis, and then a couple other guys, Charlo brothers, but I do think, I think two different questions. Is Jake Paul good for boxing? Is he going to bring excitement? Is he going to help bring more interest in boxing? Is he needed? Is the train going to continue? I say unequivocally yes. People like him. Or hate him. They love to hate him. And so he's telling Woodley now that if Woodley gets a tattoo that says "I love Jake Paul," then he'll run it back with Woodley. I don't know if Woodley's going to do that. Maybe he will if it's for $1 million. No. But I don't think he will. But I will say,
I might get a Mickey Mouse tattoo though if I'm Woodley for a few million.
There you go. Yeah. But no, Woodley is Jake Paul legit in this world of influencer fights. It may be the best and most exciting without a doubt. He's a great heel. I think he's great for the sport. I think that if he can help other fighters get paid close to what he gets paid, then that's all good. So so my answers are different if asked if he can be a real top contender ever in boxing, in my opinion, which is no. But is he a for real guy and the train going to continue? And it should. Yes, for sure, unequivocally.
But no chance of being an elite high-level guy. No chance.
My feeling, no chance at all.
We agree. We agree on that. He's not going to be that guy.
No. I think a 49-year-old Oscar De La Hoya beats him in 3 rounds.
Wow. Okay. I mean, hey, there's a fight that everyone would want to see. Oscar's got to beat Vitor first, but Oscar and Jake
Yes,
Paul.
yes.
So when does Jake Paul start turning his attention to boxing legends who are retired and done with the sport, and they're going to come in and think they can beat him? Because those are the fights that Jake Paul is going to give you. When he starts fighting some of the current boxing stars, there are no big names at all in the cruiserweight division. You can look it up. Nobody.
That's
literally.
true. There's nothing
And
there
so
really
Jake
for him.
Paul
Yeah, there's
could be a
nobody for him.
star.
And he's too small for heavyweight.
Everyone in the world's going to call him out. We see it in MMA, Colin. Everyone calls out Conor McGregor. Everyone Why?
Yes.
Because that's the money fight. Everyone in the world's going to start calling out Jake Paul, and they should.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the two fights that Jake Paul may be interested in are Oscar De La Hoya and Anderson Silva. Or if Vitor Belfort beats Oscar De La Hoya, then Vitor Belfort. So I'm going to go on record here and say most likely Jake Paul's next opponent is going to be either the winner of De La Hoya Belfort or Anderson Silva. Does Anderson have a fight? He does, doesn't he? Yeah, Tito Ortiz. So
Tito Ortiz.
the winner of Jake Paul's next opponent, I'm going to go on record here as saying I believe will either be the winner of De La Hoya Belfort or the winner of Silva Ortiz. And
I love Tito. I love Tito,
yeah.
but Anderson's going to beat him. Anderson's going to beat him.
Yeah,
I
would say for sure. I would say without a doubt.
And how can you not hit Tito's head? I love Tito, but his head's this big. It's a huge target.
It's huge.
Literally.
It's huge. Yeah.
That's a disadvantage.
It's hard. He's got a hard head, but he's got a hard head. Kind of like Chris Lieben head. Remember that huge melon?
Oh, yeah.
Chris Lieben that can take all kinds of punches. Yeah. But yeah, I think that, I tell you, with Jake Paul and Logan Paul going back and forth and Jake kind of having the better result, I think they kind of throw it back at the other one after one win. So I think the next fight we're going to see is probably Logan Paul against someone. I don't know if I tell you what, how about this? How about Logan Paul against one of the winners of Belfort and De La Hoya, Ortiz versus Silva, and Jake Paul against the other? How great would that be?
And how many of these, it would be great, and how many of these former MMA fighters are going to keep losing to the Paul brothers? I mean, they're legit fighters. I mean, yes, MMA fighters are not boxers. This was Woodley's first boxing match, and everyone just assumed because you're a UFC, not everyone, but a lot of people just assume because you're a UFC champion and you're a decent striker in MMA, you're going to go in there and throw hands. Remember, Woodley's contract up with the UFC. They had no interest in bringing him back. He's 39 years old. He had lost 4 in a row. To the elite fighters in the 170-pound division, no doubt they were champions and title contenders, every single one of them. In fact, Covington, Burns, and Usman are number one champ when Woodley lost to them and vaulted them to the number 1 position. So that guys who were beating on, but making the transition to boxing, training with Floyd Mayweather, I still think, and I know Woodley's going to be really disappointed with this loss, and a lot of MMA fans are going to say it's rigged. It was not rigged. This fight was not rigged. Trust me. Woodley hit him with a lot of shots. No. He just did not use the jab, Colin. I believe if Tyron Woodley had used the jab throughout the fight, he would have won. When he goes back and he looks at this fight, he's going to be so pissed off that he did not use that jab. That's the only reason he lost this fight. He outlanded him with power punches, but Paul, because he threw so many jabs and landed so many jabs, proved that he's the more experienced boxer because jabs and defense win more fights than power punches, 8-1.
Absolutely. I'll answer that in my great tribute to Harold Letterman. That's right, Jim.
I love Harold Letterman, by the way. And I love you. This has been fun. How are we doing in this chat room right now? We still got a ton of people watching us live. We really appreciate you guys. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like us. Hit the bell. Scott Peterson loves it. He's got the air horn going. And, man, I'll tell you what. This has been a lot of fun. We're live every week with the UFC fights, streaming live on MMA Weekly. We got some big ones coming. Colin, how about that New York card? UFC 268. We got the big one with 266, but 268 is absolutely loaded, man.
Absolutely sick. Is that the Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, that's the one where we're talking where Gaethje and Chandler is the co-main. And I'm kind of pissed off because when the Diaz brothers come in, they make the co-main 5 rounds. Why the hell is Gaethje and Chandler 3 rounds? Come on, guys. We want 5 with those.
No
Although
idea.
that fight's it's not even going to go 3, let alone 5.
No, it won't.
Let's be real. It's not going 3, let alone 5.
Yeah. No, I know.
Yep.
There's some controversy though on Wei Li Zhang getting the instant rematch
With
against
Joanna.
Rose Namajunas. Yeah,
With
no, it's
Rose
Rose.
Namajunas.
Wei
Yep.
Li's getting yeah.
Yep.
So there's a
Rose.
lot of talk. People are kind of mad at that. But then again, Wei Li says she was distracted because people were booing and she slipped on a banana peel and someone gave her some bad iced tea, and her
No,
hair was
Weidman gave her bad
not
juju
brushed.
because she saw Weidman's injury, and there was a lot of. But here's the other thing I want to
All
say:
kinds of reasons. Yeah.
Joanna. A lot of people think Joanna should get the rematch, or that Zhang should have to
Yeah.
beat Joanna again to get the
Right.
rematch with Rose.
Right.
But Rose has beaten Joanna twice. She's beaten Wei Li once,
Right.
but I absolutely believe after that fight, and you and I were there, UFC 248, the last one before COVID, where Izzy beat Romero in Yoel's last fight in the UFC, where Joanna and Wei Li were the co-main, put on one of the best fights we've ever seen, that those two should fight again with the winner getting the title shot against Thug Rose. But clearly the UFC sees it differently. And then you got Covington and Usman. You got Frankie Edgar and Chito Vera. This card is stacked from top to bottom.
Absolutely. Carla Esparza would have had something to say about the fight. It's kind of unfortunate because we all thought there was going to be unfinished business with her and Rose, where she did beat Rose. And now Rose would have a chance to avenge the loss to Carla Esparza. And it looks like she's not in the picture. So that's unfortunately. I do believe the great fighter out of Team Oyama does deserve the shot more than anyone else. Carla Esparza, especially since Tatiana Suarez has jumped to the flyweight division. But
not me. I think it's those top three. I think it's Rose, Joanna, and Wei Li are just.
I love
far
Joanna
above.
too. I feel Joanna beat Wei Li in that amazing fight where her head swelled through to three times.
That was incredible, man.
That was, man, what a warrior. Joanna, I tell you what, I interviewed Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I got a side-by-side interview with her, and I was like close to 200 pounds. Joanna.
Yep, I think we lost Colin there for a second.
He dropped off for a little bit.
I think we dropped off with Colin, but I know what he was saying. He and I were at that fight together. We each did one-on-ones with Joanna, and we each had our turn at the press conference having some fun. But I'm excited for that fight card overall. That was a great fight, Joanna and Wei Li. I think they should have run that back, but I can't complain that Zhang gets the rematch against the champion Thug Rose. And, she did get finished rather violently in that fight. But I look overall at this card, man. I think Colin's back. But when you look at that co-main, Thug Rose and Zhang, Usman and Covington, the rematch, and that was a fifth-round stoppage. But, Colby, there was a fake groin shot in there, and Usman kind of cheated his way a little bit through and got a break that he shouldn't have gotten. Gaethje and Chandler is a fight that Jeff Kane and I have been screaming about forever. That's the number one fight in the lightweight division. I don't care that Oliveira is the champ. I don't care if Poirier is fighting Diaz. The number one fight in that division to me has always been Gaethje and Chandler since Chandler came into the division with Khabib gone. But, Colin, I think you're back. The fight that I look forward to the most as a real, and I'll tell you this, so some of it might be personal, anytime I get a chance to see Luke Rockhold possibly get his head knocked off, I'm in. I'm all in. I'm throwing my house, my car, everything I have in there to see Luke Rockhold potentially get his head knocked off like he did against Jan Blachowicz. And Sean Strickland, a rising star at middleweight, gets the former champion in Luke Rockhold's comeback fight. That's a big one, man. I cannot. You got Jermaine Durand to me and Irene Aldana. You got Edgar and Vera. You got Quinta and Bobby Green. But the fight I'm looking forward to, other than Gaethje and Chandler, other than Kamaru and Colby, and other than Rose and Zhang, those are main events, all of them. But this fight between Strickland and Rockhold, man, what does Luke Rockhold have left in the tank, and how good is Sean Strickland? That, to me, is a big-time fight.
Without a doubt, Luke Rockhold had better have a rock head for as much as Sean Strickland is going to be hitting him.
Dude,
and I think that Strickland is going to turn Rockhold into a bobblehead. And I think pretty much creating a bobblehead doll after that fight. I think you're right. I think that's trouble for Luke, although Luke will be the better looking guy in that matchup as he usually
Maybe not after
the
fight.
What is that? No, after the fight, probably not. But I know the one talking the most crazy trash, not against Rockhold, but just saying the random crazy stuff, is going to be Sean Strickland. Love what that guy says. You guys got to follow that dude on social media, Sean Strickland.
I'm a psychopath.
Really unique.
I'm a psychopath.
He's the first guy that I think that's a fighter admits that if he doesn't have a date and if he's not fighting, then he's watching porn. So basically, finally, someone's being honest, right?
Isn't
And
that
he is,
everyone? I think that's everyone.
I would think who isn't doing that, right? Who's athletic, But anyway, he's definitely a straight shooter, and he tells it like it is. That's going to be just an amazing card. I think that, and I'll tell you what, I think that Colby Covington is really going to be ready for the fight with Usman.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's going to be a tough fight. I think a lot of people feel Usman him easier, but I don't know. I don't think so. I think Colby is. I think now that he knows what Usman brings, I think he's going to be able to train around it. And I think when you're the guy that wins, Usman is going to probably just come with what he came with last time, and this could be a really close fight. I know that.
I think they're both top 5 in the world, pound for pound. I think Usman's on a big time roll. The way that he's been finishing fights lately, and I don't know what that sound is. I don't know what that. Are you juggling stuff around, or is there something with your earbuds?
No, it shouldn't be. You know what? I'm sorry. Let me get the charger.
Sometimes Jeff Kane's got his zipper, and it's hidden the zipper with those earbuds. The Apple earbuds are pretty sensitive. But we've got a situation there where Usman, the one knock on him, Colin, was that he wasn't finishing dudes. And what he's done to Burns and what he did to Masvidal, that has completely dispelled that. And I was one of the guys saying it, and I got some crow handed to me, and I ate it all. But I'll say this, man, when you look at what Kamaru Usman has done, I think he's been pound for pound the best fighter in the world as of late. But Colby Covington gave him all he could handle and then some in that last fight. So I think this could be fight of the year. You got Gaethje and Chandler on the same card. What a night that's going to be in New York. So I can't wait for that one. Meanwhile, I got to ask you before we wrap it up here, end of the month, you got a huge one. Obviously, end of September. It's still August with T-City, Brian Ortega, and Volkanovski on that card, and, Valentina and Lauren Murphy. But before we get to that UFC 266 card at the end of the month of September, which is a huge pay-per-view with Nick Diaz coming back to fight Robbie Lawler again. But next week in the middleweight division, Derek Brunson and Darren Till. Now, big win for the Killer Gorilla, Jared Cannonier over Kelvin Gastelum. Great fight last week. More answers in the middleweight division. I can't wait. Brunson is the perfect guy for Till because he's a wrestler. Till's got to learn how to win these fights. He's a great striker. I cannot wait for that one. And I also can't wait to see Paddy Pimblett, who loves running his mouth and appears to be a star in the making, at least in terms of the interviews he does, if he can put the win streak together, on the main card to kick it off. So Brunson and Till next week.
Absolutely. Super, super excited about that. Brunson has been on a killing streak. He's right there at the tail end of his prime, if not maybe slightly past it at 36 or 37, but he's still so hungry and so good that even being at that point in his career, he's probably the best he's ever been. Technically, I think he's got the wrestling, he's got the striking, he's super experienced, he's super composed. Darren Till looking to be stronger than ever at 185 with his takedown defense. The question is going to be, can Darren Till stay on his feet against Derek Brunson? If he can, Derek Brunson is in a whole mess of trouble. If he can't, Darren Till is in a whole mess of trouble too. It's going to be a great fight, and the winner, I think, very well may be the next challenger for Israel Adesanya.
Well, and you got Whitaker, of course, and that's going to be the one. But then Paul,
safe for Whitaker, yeah.
Can get himself out of the running for some reason. Paulo is right there, and Paulo's got $1 million talent. You got Whitaker at 1, Costa at 2 with Izzy the champ, but right after that, Cannonier. Whoever wins this fight, I want to see him fight Cannonier, and that's it. That has to me, that has to be the next fight in the middleweight division, because Izzy and Rob, and then the winner of Till Brunson and Vettori just had his shot. So I'm going Till Brunson. The winner of that gets Cannonier, and I just don't see Costa, especially since he just pissed Dana off. I don't see Costa in that mix right now.
No, I agree. Costa may be the best looking guy out of
and
that
I love
group,
Paulo.
Once again,
I love him.
Like Rockhold. Yeah, me too. He's a great dude, but you're right. He's not in the position, and I do stand corrected. I had forgotten about the other guys in there with the Reaper, Robert Whitaker, and with Jared Cannonier. I think you're right. I think Izzy's got to fight the Reaper, and then I think that Jared Cannonier should fight the winner of Brunson versus Till. I was just thinking really quick. Could you imagine if they let Whitaker fight Jake Paul? I think he would piece him up in a
that would be awesome.
manner.
Yeah, or Izzy for that matter. Either one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dana's never going to let that happen, though. Dana will never in a million. Dana will die first.
Those fights. Yeah, and Jake Paul wouldn't take those fights. In all honesty, you know what I think would be interesting, Jim? I think it'd be interesting if someone cornered Jake Paul and he didn't know he was being recorded, and they said, "Dude, let's be honest with you. How good do you think you are? Do you think you have a high ceiling in the sport of boxing, or do you think that you really don't?" I'd be really curious to see how much Jake Paul honestly feels and about how good he is, and maybe even Logan, because I have a feeling if they're smart, they both realize that they're both kind of at the ceiling to where they can be. Although a young guy who's rich and doing well probably has more confidence than that, and maybe they feel that they can beat the world. But yeah, I have. Well, we'll find out. We'll find out if they face someone young and really talented. Then that will show they have the confidence to do it. But they're definitely turning the world upside down with this influencer fight, and they're definitely tough, athletic dudes. And the world hates Jake. I guess the world doesn't really hate Logan that much, do they? Though.
No, not really. Jake's the problem child. He's always been the one. If you follow the Paul brothers at all, and I remember when I met Logan in Vegas with Henry Cejudo and Paulo Costa and all those guys, and Captain Eric a couple of summers ago, and I sent my daughter a picture of me with Logan Paul. She lost her damn mind. Those Gen Z, I mean, I'll tell you what, these guys are absolutely enormous superstars. Enormous. They're not just influencers, and that's the word, but they are enormous superstars in that world. And now Jake Paul, and you give Logan Paul credit too with what he did against Mayweather, even though that was an exhibition. They have the chops. They know how to talk themselves into it. They know how to sell the fights for sure. And I really think, look, I mean, Logan Paul's going to get tested. We saw him fight Floyd. Floyd didn't really even do anything. I think Jake Paul, with what he did tonight, has really proven that he's serious. This was a big win over a former UFC and Strikeforce champion who's a good striker in Tyron Woodley, but Woodley's inexperience showed in this fight. The thing that Jake Paul might be best at, and the reason I'm mentioning all the things he's great at, the one thing I've left out is his ability, a Mayweather-esque ability, Colin, to hand select the perfect opponents at the perfect time. You know what I meant about Floyd? He fought Canelo when Canelo was too young. He fought Pacquiao when Pacquiao was too old. Timing was everything. The way that Mayweather selected his opponents was one of his greatest skills. That, by far, has been Jake Paul's biggest so far. He knew exactly what he was doing when he picked Ben Askren, knew exactly what he was doing when he picked Tyron Woodley, because Woodley's inexperience showed tonight with the lack of throwing the jab. The jab is the most basic fundamental in the sport of boxing, and it wins more fights than anything else when you get in that ring.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. That, and also Woodley was being a little too cautious about staying within punching range. He just was. He was missing a lot of big shots by an inch or 2 inches even. And he just, he just was a little bit too cautious, because I think he was concerned about his chin. They say the more your chin gets checked, the bigger that sweet spot is. And I think he brought a lot of pride on his shoulders, and he was not going to be slept by Jake Paul. And I think his feeling was so much tied into, I'm not going to be slept by this punk even more than I want to sleep this punk.
He got a little cocky. Woodley did. Started kind of winding up the fists a little bit. Got a little too aggressive out of his game plan. And then the 5th round was it when he landed that big right? But Jake Paul did get a couple of big shots from Woodley that really tested his chin. One of them knocked him through the ropes a little bit, Colin. So we're going to wrap things up here on MMA Weekly. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, the like, the bell. Colin Crandall of MMA Power Hour, Tuesday nights on Fight, one of the best shows in the game. I call him the smartest guy in the MMA game, and we're in that together, and we always bond, and we have a great time. Honey, the two guys who I bonded with the most over the years at the event are you and Scott Peterson, and both of you are here right now. But before we wrap it up, Colin, I want to get your final thoughts. Done a fantastic job tonight. Your final thoughts on Paul versus Woodley and our show here tonight on MMA Weekly.
Absolutely. MMA Weekly does an amazing job. Jim Grieshaber as well. You're right there with me as a couple of the most knowledgeable guys in combat sports. You're amazing. I love you a lot. You're amazing, good dear friend, and a wonderful man, a tremendous person. Great job here. This was a lot of fun. This fight, I think, answered a couple questions that Jake Paul can indeed take a shot, can react, won't panic, can recover quick. But his style when he's in danger is a little bit more movement oriented than we saw when he went and blasted Nate Robinson and when he went and blasted Ben Askren. So I think he is going to be a guy who kind of sticks and moves and when there is danger and maybe doesn't beat guys so easily as a lot of people thought. Tyron Woodley, I think, really impressed the hell out of a lot of people. He represented MMA, a nearly 40-year-old fighter. Toward the end of his career, he came in there looking strong and athletic and did himself proud. One judge felt he won. I would have not had a problem with that. I think the fight was a draw, but really a great night of entertainment. And again, I think everyone wins and people got their money's worth. Hopefully they enjoyed us talking over here. MMA Weekly rocks, MMA Power Hours, my bag, as they used to say. And make sure to jump in the bag once in a while on a Tuesday. Follow Jim Grieshaber, Scott Peterson, MMA Weekly rocks. And it's just been a pleasure being here.
That's great. And I want to give you my final thought with Tyron Woodley making his professional boxing debut. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat about how Jake Paul is destroying MMA. No, bullshit. Jake Paul is not destroying MMA. This is happening in the boxing ring. Boxing's already been destroyed for a long time. They're devoid of stars. Boxing had become a joke for years with all the different organizations and the best fighters not fighting each other. They left it wide open for mixed martial arts to come in, for the UFC to take over as the number one entity in combat sports. You can talk all you want about the fighter pay being higher in boxing. The UFC is king in combat sports and the king of MMA. And so when I look at that, boxing had played itself out a long time ago, and people are saying, Jake Paul, it's a farce. Boxing's all circus fights now. Maybe it is. It's the only thing, boxing fans, I'm sorry, it pains me to say this, it's the only thing keeping this sport alive right now is this kind of shit. Thank God that's not happening in the octagon. It's happening in the boxing ring. That's my final thought on the night. Check out MMA Power Hour on Tuesdays with Colin Crandall in for Jeff Kane. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Jeff and his family. We'll talk to him when he comes back next week. We're streaming live for Brunson and Till on MMA Weekly. I'm interviewing the All-American Chris Weidman tomorrow, the UFC legend. We'll have that interview up for you as well. In the meantime, keep subscribing, keep following, hit that bell. Follow us on every form of social media. Jake Paul beats Tyron Woodley fair and square in the boxing ring by split decision tonight. Use the jab, use the ability to play defense and get away from Woodley, keep away from that powerful right hand for most of the night. We appreciate you being here in the chat room. Again, subscribe, hit the bell, like. We love you commenting. We appreciate you here on MMA Weekly, the most trusted source of news and entertainment and mixed martial arts for almost 20 years. Until next time, fight fans, I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Grease, reminding you to keep your game tight and your mind right. We are out.
Peace.
Thank you.